create a Petro-Canada 2.0
Yeah.
to be able to
yeah, I don't know how people in Alberta would feel about that, but
Canada is being left behind. Welcome back to Moose and Loose. My name's David. Today we have an oil executive on CBC, Rosemary Barton's show, blasting the Liberal government for being the problem in Canada for big infrastructure projects, oil and gas, prosperity in this country. We're also seeing China coming out with AI-driven, autonomous-driven mining and construction trucks, leapfrogging Canada into the future ahead. We've got a handful of other stories here. Let's jump into this. Starting this one off, we've got Marty up north, who's an engineer. He says this is his forecast for Carney's annual deficits, the solid red bars, the ones over here. He's going to push our debt to $3 trillion with no plan to repay any of it anytime soon. Interest alone on Canada's federal debt is going to be $60 billion this fiscal year, which is more than we spend on healthcare. Just think of that. Our debt is more than our entire healthcare. So this is his prediction here, the red bars. We can see the world event here. We can see Trudeau's spending, which was forecasted to go down. Mark Carney's costed plan, though, was way up here. So I wouldn't be surprised if Carney is in for 4 years that this is what our books look like for Canada. You and I won't be benefiting from this. Just liberals, well-connected people to the Liberal Party, probably in other countries like Africa, will get a lot of contracts for doing a whole lot of nothing. We will be forced into bankruptcy. Your savings and retirement investments will be depleted rather quickly by inflation. Fighting inflation is a monster task at this point. Got this one from Table Salt. It says the average age of an Ontario first-time home buyer is now 40 years old. He goes on to blast people of Ontario. We'll take a look at the graph here. 56% of people voted for the Liberal Party despite voting in Doug Ford. So it seems the people in Ontario know Doug Ford is a Liberal. Only 43% of people in Ontario voted for the Conservative Party. Next up on CBC, we got an oil executive here, Adam Waterous, who blames the Liberal government for the disastrous position that we are in today. It's entirely the regulatory environment that the Liberals have created that now prosperity in Canada is a thing of the past.
I think it's changed quite dramatically over the last several months is the Canadian public desire to see investments in energy infrastructure, LNG facilities, pipelines. And the energy industry is always interested in building that kind of stuff. But historically, over the last 8+ years, there has not been capital available to the industry to be able to build those because of the regulatory environment. And so in response to numerous calls on the industry to advance projects, what the industry essentially simply did is said, well, if you want the private sector to do this, these are the requirements that would have to be made and changes to policy and regulatory frameworks to be able to attract private sector investment to build pipelines and LNG facilities.
So Danielle Smith laid out all those demands. There's about 9 of them that all the oil execs, including that guy, came together and said, this is what we need for Canada to have prosperity, for those projects to go forward, to not be bottlenecked and hamstrung by the Liberal government.
Now, building pipelines and LNG facilities doesn't have to be done with the private sector. It could be done by public funds. You could have state-owned enterprises do it. That's what happened with Trans Mountain, was a state-owned enterprise. Yeah. And that's, of course, a valid alternative.
That is not the alternative we want in Canada. We just want private businesses doing this, paying their taxes to Canada. Canada gets rich off those taxes. Those businesses make good money. It's a win-win. When the government gets involved, the price, as we saw with Trans Mountain, it doubles, triples, quadruples, because government is always inefficient. They waste so much money.
That the government may want to consider. So that's just the background on the letter itself.
So going back to where I started then, what signs do you see from this new cabinet, this new government, that some of the things that you and other energy CEOs have called for are being considered, that the regulatory environment will get easier?
So we went through a very specific list of essentially half a dozen things, which was kind of what we would describe as a how-to list of getting private sector investment. And we sent by those requirements to all the leaders, so it wasn't just to Mark Carney, as to what was going to be required. Now, during the campaign, frankly, it was disappointing, the response from Mark Carney on the campaign trail. For instance, we said, you're going to need to scrap C-69, the so-called No More Pipelines bill. He said, no. We're going to have to scrap the hard cap on emissions. He said, no. We said, you're going to have to scrap the federal industrial carbon tax. He said, no. We said, you need a hard approval project for approvals of 6 months. He said 2 years. So it was fairly discouraging during the campaign. Now, having said that, sometimes what's said in the campaign and actually what gets implemented, parties in government can be two very different things.
Sure.
That's what we've seen. Mark Carney saying one thing on one side of the country or one interview and saying another thing in another place. The reason why Mark Carney is against oil and gas pipelines is because he has $7 million of stock options in Brookfield. And as you can see here by all the green leaf icons, these are all their green projects. They do have a few pipelines, Colonial Pipeline in US, but more notably Inter Pipeline in Canada. They don't want new pipelines that isn't being built by Brookfield because that'll compete for oil and gas in Canada. Not only that, all the different links to Qatar and their stranglehold, they're the world leader in LNG. There seems to be a lot more going on there, but just simply put, the more green projects, the more countries push to do these green projects, the more Brookfield benefits from this because they're already positioned to make money off of all these green projects. I mean, look at them, all of them going down here. There's a ton of them.
There seems to be a continued desire from the Prime Minister to build LNG facilities, to build pipelines, as he likes to say, at a scale never seen before, at a pace never seen before. Mm-hmm.
Who else says stuff like that? Donald Trump. Donald Trump's always the most bolsterous guy, saying the biggest ever, the greatest ever. Mark Carney using the same language. It's almost like these guys know each other.
Now, how that's going to get done, he has a very clear fork in the road. He doesn't have to use the private sector. We think there's good reasons why he might choose to do that, but we recognize that that's not the only thing. He could create, much like the Liberal government did 50 years ago, Petro-Canada, to respond to another international crisis. So, well, this is an international crisis. You could create a Petro-Canada 2.0.
Yeah.
To be able to
I don't know how people in Alberta would feel about that, but let me. So, Minister Hodgson, who has some experience with the oil sands sector and in the industry, is coming out to Alberta this coming week, is my understanding. But in the meantime, Minister Guilbeault, I'm not sure if you saw his comments this week, said that nothing further should be built unless and until the infrastructure that is in place is used at capacity. I wonder.
It's so funny, Rosemary Barton here. Her body language, her voice, her tone. She's so uncomfortable talking to this guy. She probably regrets bringing this guy on. And that comment there about Guilbeault saying that Trans Mountain is only at 40% capacity. I've already showed it. It's at about 75%, 80% capacity right now. It's almost already maxed out. We need more pipelines and we need them right now.
What you made of those comments, how you reconcile all of those different things?
Well, the fact of the matter is Trans Mountain is, by various estimates, are expected to be, the Trans Mountain pipeline is going to be filled by 2027.
That 2027, that's filling the last 25%. It's already 75 to 80% capacity right now. It's funny, Rosemary asking him about Guilbeault, and he's like, he doesn't, he wants to stay polite versus blasting the guy because that's what Guilbeault deserves.
Uh-huh. What we're looking to try and do is be able to have additional, when you think about pipelines, specifically oil pipelines, what we're trying to essentially do is to be able to get a pipeline in service in 3 years. That's essentially 6 months for approvals, another 6 months for full engineering, 2 years of construction. That's 3 years, which is essentially when the next pipeline is going to be needed. I think there's maybe a little bit of confusion as to what the market demand was.
Yeah.
Lots of market demand. That's not that the industry has no concern about that. And I quickly would say the Build Canada Now initiative was just talked about regulatory reform. It didn't call for any money from the federal government to be invested in the industry. The industry will do this. We just can't get money from investors with the current regulatory environment in it. So
that's it right there. Can't get money from investors because the Liberals have absolutely clamped down on this so hard that no one wants to invest. Nobody can invest. Nobody wants to put their money to something with the idea that the Liberals are going to come and just say, nah, you guys can't go through that area. You have to go up north, or you can't connect the dots here with your pipeline because this, that, or the other, and end up wasting $1 billion, $2 billion, $5 billion building this thing out and it doesn't work out, or spending hundreds of millions of dollars on planning or regulation and having it getting turned down. They want a country where it's open and welcoming to this kind of investment, where it's easy. If people had voted for Pierre Poilievre, his team would have gone through and sectioned out areas and said, these are pre-zoned areas, buy the land, set up the pipeline, off you go. For mines, projects like this, people voted for the wrong person. We have a lot of dumb, uninformed Canadians that really did a disservice to all the rest of us by voting for Mark Carney.
That's why we keep on saying, well, it's either got to be the public purse or private sector. The industry always wants to build stuff. The reason they haven't done, there's been no major project sanctioning over the last 8 years is because the industry can't get the money to do it, given the current regulatory environment.
The regulatory environment problem is affecting so many aspects of Canada right now. This eco-green climate flag-waving hypocrisy that comes from Ottawa is ridiculous. Trudeau flew around on his gas-guzzling jet for a decade, gives our money to unvetted organizations around the world for so-called climate, gender, women's health projects. Organizations unvetted, can't track the books, can't track anything. Meanwhile, Canada increases exports of coal, doesn't displace dirty coal, dirty techniques of coal mining and LNG and other resource development in other countries. We could easily reduce the world's pollution by just exporting more of our LNG. And of course, that's not what they did. This isn't about the climate. This is all about money. The Liberals are greedy thieves, and they've been running our country like their own little personal piggy bank to get rich off of. Just look at the SDTC scandal. Where's that gone? That needs to be released to the public. We still have traitors in our government. We don't know. Name the traitors. We got some serious problems here, and Canadians are just too uninformed. They have no idea who they voted for. They voted the criminals back into the government. Just looking back at the comments here, she hated every second of that interview. Rosie, with all her investigative skills, pretending she didn't know this, actually surprised the CBC actually aired this content. I am too, honestly. He was awfully diplomatic. Yeah, he was. He should have just completely blasted. I mean, when she mentioned Guilbeault, he's like, he had nothing nice to say. Guilbeault flat out lied about TMX usage. He did, and he should have said so. That guy knew full well that TMX is at 75% capacity right now. At least he noted that every practical suggestion for increasing private sector investment was nuked by Carney during the campaign. Next up, we have this one. It says China has launched the world's first and largest fleet of 100 driverless electric mining trucks equipped with Huawei technology. Is this the future? Autonomous driving truck. I mean, what stops them from making autonomous loading trucks, digging trucks, all the trucks?
No problem.
China is leading in technology. Well, those things are huge and autonomous. And the West says China products are cheap due to dumping or government subsidies. Next up, we got this one from Global News. It says businesses at the U.S.-Canada border hammered by Trump tariffs and rhetoric.
Business at the Rubber Duck Museum in Point Roberts, Washington is not all it's quacked up to be. Trump's tariff war and tirades about annexing Canada have kept Canadian visitors away.
We literally woke up one day to just emails of just regulars who said, I'm sorry, I can't come anymore. I cannot support your country. I cannot support your government.
So this summer, it's taking flight from the tiny border town, isolated from the U.S., except by boat or plane, to Canada.
As the dominoes start falling, more will fall because you need restaurants to bring people into town. You need things to do.
A dramatic plunge in business forced this parcel shipper to shut down after a quarter century. 99% of its customers are Canadians.
The difference between COVID and now is people still wanted their stuff, so people were ordering, we'd ship to them. And now a lot of customers just don't even want to come. Lots of them have said, we'll see you in 4 years.
According to the U.S. Travel Association, we've only seen plunges in travel to America of this magnitude twice before in the past quarter century, in the months after the 9/11 terror attacks and the first year of the COVID pandemic. This dual citizen and tavern owner has a bone to pick with the way the U.S. president picked this trade war.
You want tariffs and stuff, there's a proper way to do it, but why would you treat our allies, make fun of them, calling it a 51st state? Like, what's the matter with you?
Ottawa's top diplomat in Washington says initial negotiations with Trump's team will focus on lifting tariffs, but small business owners on both sides of the border worry it won't come soon enough.
Even if he said, well, we're going to remove the tariffs, I think the damage has been done as far as how they feel about it.
Ann Gaviola, Global News.
I think that guy's right. The damage is done. I don't think people are going to change their mind on that no matter what, even if the tariffs get lifted today or tomorrow or next week. I'm Canadian. The dude in this clip is right. The damage has already been done. Even if the tariffs are removed, we feel the sentiment from the current administration. The damage is done. I'm glad to be old enough to have traveled in the US when I was younger. Now just retired, there's no way I will travel in the US anymore in my life. Obviously, I also banned all USA products as much as possible. I mean, this is sad. Like, people's products in America have nothing to do with Donald Trump's tariffs. And vice versa. It's going both ways. It hurts both sides. And obviously, business owners on both sides of the border have nothing to do with these tariffs. But it really is true. There's just this anger between the both sides, especially Canadians to Americans, that this damage, I don't think it'll be undone for a long time, if ever. Look at these comments. Damage is done and won't be back to the USA ever. RIP Rubber Duck Museum. Next up, we got Sun Duran. This one for bad guys come into Ontario home. You know, more bad stuff, more of the typical liberal stuff we're used to seeing.
This is terrifying in Markham, Ontario.
In Markham. Masked and armed suspects caught on camera entering a home. 3 adults and a child were inside at the time.
In the video, we see a red SUV with a silver roof rack parked before 4 suspects are seen walking down the sidewalk. When they arrive at the home, they rush inside and are seen turning the lights on and off.
They kick the door
Then
down
one suspect
so easy.
is clearly seen with a gun before appearing to pick something up off the table.
He's pointing the
it
at
to
them.
the
Look.
ground. Police say this is a very brazen incident and the suspects were evidently prepared to come into contact with the homeowners.
What hurts me the most about this is that these animals are not only destroying the lives of these families, but they're scarring these children for life. It's our children in this country are being scarred from these people that are...
These kids that grow up, they have no future in this country. They'll never own a home unless they get it from their parents. They'll have the scars of having to deal with this. There's always going to be this feeling of having to look over your shoulder when you have someone come into your safe space, into your home, pointing a pew-pew at you. This is Liberals Canada, and Liberal supporters want more of this, but probably because they haven't had this happen to them. Next up, we got a moose giving birth outside a hospital in Alaska.
An unexpected moment in Anchorage brought a little bit of wilderness right to a hospital's front door. Early Thursday morning, a moose gave birth right outside Providence Hospital in Alaska. Staff and patients watched from inside as the calf was born and took its first steps. Wildlife officials say moose often return to quiet, familiar spots to give birth, and this hospital lawn fit the bill.
This is one of the biggest times where we see cow moose being particularly aggressive because they're defending their young. Right now, they know moose calves can't get up, they can't run very fast, so they can't keep up with mom, meaning mom's defense is to stand her ground and stop anything that comes too close.
With calving season underway, officials are urging people to keep their distance and remember that even in the city, nature sometimes walks right up to our doorstep.